She was just a woman in the courtroom, but when the arrogant clerk laughed, no one expected her to be the judge. Courtroom was bustling with the usual morning tension, papers rustling, heels clicking, whispers bouncing off the polished oak walls. Judge Monique Davis entered, her black robe flowing gracefully, a quiet authority radiating from her. She nodded to the clerk, Rebecca Lang, who smirked, barely hiding her impatience, and immediately muttered under her breath about the young black judge trying too hard. Monique's sharp brown eyes caught the sneer, but she stayed calm, seated herself, and began reviewing the morning docket. Across the room, Attorney David Harper adjusted his tie, watching for any sign of favoritism or weakness, as the spectators shuffled, whispering amongst themselves. The first case was a minor dispute, but the tension felt like a trial for Monique herself rather than the defendants. Rebecca's eyes followed her every movement, the clerk's mouth twitching as if waiting for an opportunity to humiliate. When Monique asked for the first witness, Rebecca scoffed audibly, assuming she would intimidate the witness with her supposed authority. But Monique's calm, precise voice carried clearly across the room, commanding respect effortlessly. She noticed the subtle judgments, the raised eyebrows, the murmured comments from spectators, and decided to let them stew in their assumptions for now. The case progressed, but the clerk's mocking glances became more noticeable, her laughter occasionally muffled behind her hand, directed at Monique whenever she questioned a witness or made a ruling. Monique's face remained impassive, but inside, her mind carefully catalogued every slight, every smirk, every whisper of disbelief at her position. She knew the real test was coming. The clerk would not stop until she tried to break Monique publicly, and Monique had a plan to turn the assumptions upside down, to reveal not just her authority, but the deep respect she commanded, and the consequences of underestimating her. Every footstep in the room, every whisper, every tick of the clock added to the suspense, the air thick with tension, the spectators unaware that today would end in a revelation none would forget. Monique's calm eyes met Rebecca's one final time, and she gave a subtle nod, a promise that the courtroom would witness more than just law. It would witness truth, justice, and the unmasking of prejudice, leaving every observer, clerk, and lawyer with a moment they would never forget. Judge Monique Davis felt the weight of the courtroom's attention as the morning proceedings continued. Each word she spoke precise, calm, yet carrying an authority that made some shift uncomfortably in their seats. Clerk Rebecca Lang could not hide her irritation, rolling her eyes when Monique asked a simple procedural question, muttering about the nerve of a young black judge daring to correct a seasoned attorney. Attorney David Harper took notes quietly, careful not to cross Monique while observing the clerk's obvious bias, his lips tightening as he sensed the tension rising. Spectators whispered among themselves, some judging Monique silently, others impressed by her poised composure, unaware that the clerk's subtle racism was being documented mentally by the judge for future use. A new case was called, a dispute between two business partners, tense and heated, with one clearly trying to manipulate the court. Monique listened carefully, eyes scanning the documents, voice steady as she asked probing questions that forced the participants to reveal the truth, each inquiry demonstrating her skill and patience. Rebecca tried to smirk, expecting embarrassment, but instead Monique's questions revealed inconsistencies and hidden motives, making the witness stumble. David Harper's eyebrows rose slightly. He recognized the finesse and intelligence in Monique's approach, a display that demanded respect even from the most biased observers. As the hearing progressed, Rebecca's whispering and chuckles grew bolder, and she leaned over to another clerk, confident that Monique would never notice. Monique's gaze, sharp and unwavering, caught every subtle gesture. She calmly wrote notes in her ledger, each observation recorded, each slight stored as potential leverage. The courtroom began to sense the silent battle between authority and prejudice, though most still underestimated the control Monique had over the room. Her composure never wavered, and with each passing moment, she subtly reminded everyone that her role was more than ceremonial. She was the ultimate authority in this chamber, and no clerk or lawyer could undermine that. A break was called, and Rebecca muttered complaints to anyone who would listen, unaware that her words were being noted by Monique, who quietly smiled, knowing that the moment for revelation was approaching. Spectators stretched their legs, whispered, some noticing the tension, others dismissing it as typical courtroom drama. David Harper observed the clerk's arrogance with quiet amusement, understanding that Monique's quiet patience would soon expose Rebecca in a way that left no room for doubt about who truly commanded respect here. Monique's mind raced with plans to turn the clerk's disdain into a lesson about judgment, prejudice, and the consequences of underestimating a black woman in power, knowing that when she finally acted, the courtroom would never forget the day appearances and assumptions were shattered, and justice was not just served, but witnessed in full clarity. The courtroom returned from break with a heavy silence, the tension lingering like a charged storm. Judge Monique Davis's eyes scanned the room, calm and observant, as Clerk Rebecca Lang continued her subtle displays of condescension, tapping pens loudly and smirking at the witness, confident no one would notice. Attorney David Harper, seated to the side, carefully watched the clerk's arrogance, noting her repeated attempts to undermine Monique, aware that the judge's patience was not to be mistaken for weakness. Spectators shifted uneasily, some whispering about the unusual dynamic, others too polite or too biased to openly challenge the clerk's behavior, while Monique's keen gaze caught every eye roll, every hushed snicker, storing them for the moment of truth. The next case involved a delicate custody dispute, fraught with emotion, and Monique handled it with measured authority, questioning each side with precision and fairness, forcing uncomfortable truths to surface. Rebecca's smugness grew as she assumed her role as observer and evaluator, never expecting that Monique had already anticipated each of her moves. Every misstep from the clerk, every snide glance, only reinforced Monique's quiet control. She guided the proceedings so expertly that the witnesses and lawyers were compelled to answer honestly. And the courtroom gradually began to sense that Monique's authority could not be challenged. David Harper suppressed a grin, knowing that the clerk's own arrogance would soon be her undoing. Rebecca attempted a subtle interruption, whispering to the bailiff about a procedural error she imagined, certain the judge would be flustered. Monique did not react visibly. She continued questioning a witness, voice calm and firm, yet internally prepared the moment to expose Rebecca's disrespect. Spectators leaned forward, sensing a silent duel of power unfolding before them, unaware that Monique had been quietly collecting every slight and every display of bias, creating a record not just of the case, but of human character under scrutiny. David Harper admired the skill. He knew that Monique's plan was deliberate, precise, and unassailable, and that justice here was not only about law, but about revealing hidden prejudices. By mid-afternoon, the atmosphere had thickened, and Monique called for a procedural demonstration to illustrate a point in the case. Rebecca, overconfident and eager to show superiority, attempted to correct the judge openly, misreading the subtle signals of control in Monique's posture and voice. The courtroom froze, all eyes turned to the clerk as Monique's calm, unwavering gaze pinned her in place. Monique allowed a brief pause, letting the tension build, then spoke with clarity and authority, reminding everyone that decorum, respect, and understanding of the law applied to all, and that no one, not even a clerk, could assume superiority over the judge or manipulate the proceedings without consequence. Gasps and whispers spread through the spectators. Even David Harper felt the weight of the revelation approaching, knowing the climax of Monique's quiet strategy was imminent. The pieces were set, the audience engaged, and the moment for Rebecca's ultimate exposure drew near. Monique's quiet confidence suggested that when the final reveal came, it would not just silence the clerk, but also leave an indelible lesson for the courtroom, challenging prejudices and assumptions while demonstrating the strength, intelligence, and fairness of a black woman in power. Every subtle smirk, every whispered insult from Rebecca had been accounted for, and now the moment to convert arrogance into accountability was only moments away, leaving the courtroom teetering on suspense, waiting for the undeniable revelation that would change perceptions forever. The courtroom held its breath as Judge Monique Davis rose from her bench, her movements calm but commanding, eyes steady and piercing, every inch the respected authority she had long been. Clerk Rebecca Lang, unaware that the moment she had so arrogantly awaited was approaching, adjusted papers nervously, smirk fading as Monique's measured gaze swept over her. Attorney David Harper watched with a mix of admiration and anticipation, knowing that Monique's strategy had been meticulous from the start, each subtle insult and mocking gesture from Rebecca meticulously observed and catalogued. Spectators leaned forward, whispers dying down, the energy shifting as the tension reached its peak, the suspense nearly tangible in the air. Monique began the final case proceedings with an unwavering voice, deliberately framing each statement and question to highlight not just the legal issues at hand, but also the biases that had subtly influenced the courtroom. Rebecca, trying to maintain her usual superiority, interjected with a sharp remark, misjudging Monique's silence as hesitation. Monique paused, allowing the moment to linger, every eye in the room drawn to the silent battle unfolding. The clerk's confidence wavered as Monique slowly, deliberately revealed her role not just as a judge, but as the final authority over every procedure, every word, every action in the courtroom, exposing the arrogance that had blinded Rebecca to the truth. The revelation struck like lightning. Gasps filled the room as spectators realized that the woman they had assumed powerless was, in fact, the ultimate arbiter of justice. Rebecca's face drained of color as Monique's calm but firm words outlined the clerk's misjudgments, her attempts to undermine others, and the subtle prejudices she had allowed to influence her behavior. Monique's voice carried authority and precision, making it impossible for anyone to dispute her observations. Attorney Harper nodded in approval, acknowledging the skill and intelligence required to orchestrate such a revelation without ever appearing confrontational, demonstrating the power of quiet confidence and deep understanding of human nature. Monique concluded by emphasizing fairness, respect, and accountability, reminding the courtroom that true authority is not proven by mocking others, but by acting with integrity and wisdom. Rebecca, humbled and silent, could only acknowledge the lesson, the weight of her assumptions and biases made unmistakably clear. Spectators erupted in subdued applause, some moved by the display of justice, others forced to reflect on their own prejudices. The courtroom had not just witnessed a legal proceeding, it had experienced a masterclass in dignity, authority, and the quiet power of a black woman commanding respect in a world that often underestimated her. As the gavel struck, ending the session, Monique's eyes met those of the audience with a gentle reminder. Justice, patience, and observance can expose prejudice and transform understanding. She allowed herself a small smile, knowing that the lesson would resonate far beyond the walls of the courtroom. And with that, the suspense, drama, and the story of courage and intelligence concluded perfectly. If you enjoyed this story and the powerful reveal, make sure to hit the like button, leave a comment about what surprised you the most, and subscribe for more suspenseful, emotional stories. Don't forget to share this with friends so they too can experience the dramatic journey of Judge Monique Davis.